Imagine standing in a room, right?
Yes.
And you're looking into the eyes of like 80 people who have completely trusted you with their livelihoods.
Oh, man. That's heavy.
Yeah, and you are literally physically crying. You're weeping because you have to tell them that, well, they're all fired. Every single one of their jobs is just gone.
Right. The absolute nightmare scenario.
Exactly. And to even get to this catastrophic moment, you've already, maxed out all your credit cards. You've legally mortgaged your aging parents' house, so their entire life safety net is on the line.
Which is just, I mean, the stress of that alone is unimaginable.
It is. But it gets worse because just a few days ago, simply to buy your young son a bicycle for his birthday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, something he's been begging for all year. To do that, you had to quietly take your wife's gold bangles, walk into a jewelry shop, and literally sell them for cash.
I mean, that is just the absolute rock bottom of the entrepreneurial dream, isn't it?
It really is.
It's that dark, hidden reality that they never, ever put on the glossy magazine covers.
Right. It's complete, absolute devastation. But, here is the question that should be burning in your mind right now.
Okay, what is it?
How does a person bounce back from that? From that level of financial, emotional, and public ruin to become one of the most recognized, massively successful entrepreneurs and content creators of his entire generation?
Yeah, that's the real mystery.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. I'm your host, and today we are completely stripping away the shiny veneer of success. We're pulling directly from the audiobook transcripts and the writings of Do Epic Shit by Ankur Warikoo.
Such a fascinating source material.
Right. And for those who aren't familiar, Warikoo built an absolute empire, both as an entrepreneur and just this massive personal brand. But, our mission today isn't to just fawn over his billion-dollar valuations or his follower counts.
No, definitely not.
Hey.
The mission here is much more surgical than that.
Exactly.
We're here to extract his most brutally honest, unfiltered reflections on failure. We're going to deconstruct his exact architecture for building daily habits, unpack those toxic lies society feeds us about money, and really examine the incredibly hard edges of human relationships.
Yeah, because the ultimate goal here is to help you, the listener, fundamentally shift how you operate in your own life.
Right, moving from that state of comfortable drifting ignorance into a place of really profound weaponized self-awareness.
Well said. But okay, let's unpack this. Because right at the start of this material, Warikoo throws out a disclaimer that just completely stopped me in my tracks.
Oh, the anti-marketing pitch.
Yes. As a creator, he explicitly tells his audience that this book might be the single most useless thing they ever buy.
It's so bold.
He literally says there are 0 new revelations in it and that it contains absolutely nothing you don't already know deep down.
Yeah, it's a fascinating psychological hook, isn't it? I mean, who sells a book like that? But he uses this brilliant metaphor from his childhood in India to explain how you should actually, consume his work. He talks about this game school kids play called book cricket.
Okay, I hadn't heard of this before. How does it work?
So the premise is super simple. Kids randomly flip open a textbook, look at the page number, and use the last digit of that number to score runs in an imaginary game of cricket.
So it's just totally random.
Entirely random. And Warikoo suggests you approach his reflections the exact same way.
Yeah.
He doesn't want you reading this linearly, like from chapter 1 to the end, treating it like some sacred sequential textbook.
Right.
He wants you to just flip it open, read one random thought for the day, and let that thought score awareness points for your brain.
Okay, I get the charm of the metaphor,
Yep.
but I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
I'm looking at this from the perspective of our listener. If the guy openly admits he has no new secrets to the universe, and his content won't magically alter your destiny, why on earth should anyone stick around for the next hour to listen to us dissect it?
That's a totally fair question. But what's fascinating here is the massive gulf between knowing a concept intellectually and actually possessing the emotional vocabulary to process it.
Okay, explain that a bit more.
Well, think about the human condition, right? Every single day, we walk around carrying these incredibly dense, recurring thought loops. We feel a vague sense of inadequacy, or we feel anxious about our careers.
Oh, absolutely. Or stuck in relationships.
Right. But because we're moving so fast, we rarely stop the machinery of our lives to put an exact name to what we are feeling.
We just feel the stress but don't define it.
Exactly. So Warikoo's genius isn't invention, it's precision. He acts as a highly articulate mirror. He puts precise, unapologetic, and honestly, often uncomfortable words to the universal human struggles we're all quietly dealing with.
Oh man, that makes complete sense. It's the difference between walking around for a year with a vague, throbbing pain in your knee and finally sitting down with a surgeon who points to an MRI and says, right there, that is a microscopic tear in your meniscus.
Yes, that's a perfect analogy. The pain isn't new. You knew it was there all along.
But suddenly, having a precise diagnosis gives you the actual power to start physical therapy. It gives you a roadmap to heal.
Exactly. When someone perfectly articulates your internal chaos, they hand you the tools to adjust your behavior. But, to truly understand Warikoo's philosophy on how to adjust, we first have to fundamentally dismantle the metric system that society uses to measure us.
Right, which brings us to the concept of the societal script. And I love thinking about this in terms of software, right? And society hands us this beautiful, glossy user interface for life.
The UI of success.
Exactly. It's the pristine LinkedIn profile. It's the holiday photos on Instagram. It's this rigid timeline we're all supposedly meant to hit.
Yeah, the template is incredibly rigid. It's like you go to a prestigious university, you secure a safe corporate job, you get married by 25, buy a house by 30, and just steadily climb a ladder until you die or retire.
Right. But the rules of this UI are entirely comparative. Like, if you get a great corporate job, society checks the success box.
Yeah.
But wait, if you go to a dinner party and find out your neighbor has a job that pays 20% more, suddenly society demands you view your own job as a failure.
Because you're only measuring against the external.
Exactly. If you get married at 25, you're a massive success. But if you find yourself divorced by 30, you're branded a catastrophic failure. The entire system is built on external validation.
Which is exactly why Warikoo argues that the entire template is a complete illusion. True success is actually a highly private relationship you have with your own self.
A private relationship. I like that.
It's the internal alignment of your actions with your own values. If you're staying true to your own internal compass, then the world's definition of your failure is completely irrelevant.
But I mean, stripping away that societal UI to find your own source code usually leaves a lot of scars, doesn't it?
Oh, definitely. And honestly, no one showcases their scars quite like this guy.
No kidding. At the age of 41, Warikoo did something really radical. Instead of publishing a list of his accolades, he published his failure resume.
The failure resume. It's brilliant.
And the specific granular details he includes are heavy. I mean, this isn't the standard corporate humble brag where someone goes, oh, my biggest weakness is that I just work too hard.
Right. I care too much.
Exactly. This is a chronicle of deep, agonizing rejection.
It really is. He starts all the way back in his youth with his rejection from the IITs, the Indian Institutes of Technology.
Right, and for our listeners who might not be familiar with the Indian education system, getting into an IIT is akin to getting into MIT or Harvard, but arguably with even more ferocious statistical competition.
It's intense.
It is viewed by many middle-class families as, like, the golden ticket out of financial struggle.
And Warikoo failed the entrance exams. And he writes that it was the very first time he ever saw his father cry.
Whoa.
Yeah. You have to pause and just imagine the crushing psychological weight of that on a teenager. You aren't just dealing with academic disappointment, You're internalizing the belief that you've single-handedly destroyed your family's financial salvation.
That is a staggering burden for a kid. And the academic rejections just cascade from there. I mean, he applies to St. Stephen's College for a physics degree, gets all the way to the interview stage, and the principal of the college, Dr. Wilson, looks him dead in the eye and essentially tells him, I don't think you're cut out for physics.
It's brutal.
Yeah. Later, he sets his sights on academia in the U.S. He applies to 7 different PhD programs. 6 of them send him flat-out rejection letters.
And the one university that finally accepts him, he packs up his life, moves across the world, and then ends up dropping out of the program at age 24.
Just walks away.
Yeah. He returns home to India with absolutely no money, no backup plan, and completely rudderless.
And you'd think, okay, he pivots to the corporate world, maybe he finds his footing there, but the failure resume continues right into his professional life.
Oh yeah, it doesn't stop.
He manages to land an interview at the Boston Consulting Group. Now, BCG is an apex predator in the consulting world. Getting an interview is a monumental achievement.
It really is.
And at the end of the grueling interview process, the partner looks at him and asks him to rate his own performance on a scale of 1 to 5. Warikoo, knowing how badly he stumbled, says 2 out of 5.
And the interviewer simply nods and agrees with him.
Ouch.
I mean, the humiliation of that is visceral. But it actually gets worse.
Hard to believe, but yeah.
Fast forward to when he's 29 years old. He has an MBA. He joins a startup co-founded by one of his own business school batchmates. He's supposed to be part of the elite leadership.
And what happens?
His own friend fires him. He fires him because Warikoo couldn't scale his mindset. He refused to admit his mistakes, and he was just a terrible manager of his own time.
Getting fired by your peer, your friend, at 29 when you're supposed to be hitting your stride. I mean, why on earth would a successful multimillionaire publicly broadcast this timeline of humiliation?
Because we have a completely toxic cultural obsession with hiding our missteps. We spend so much energy curating these flawless digital avatars, scrubbing away all the messy, broken parts of our history.
Right.
But psychologically, when you force yourself to physically write out a failure resume, you flip the narrative. You stop viewing your failures as shameful, radioactive secrets that need to be hidden in the basement. You start viewing them as empirical evidence.
Evidence of what, exactly?
Evidence that you were in the arena.
Yeah.
You realize that scars are not signs of weakness. They are proof of a battle fought.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, if you have a pristine resume with 0 failures, it doesn't mean you're a genius. It usually means you spent your entire life playing it incredibly safe, never pushing the boundaries of what you're actually capable of. The failure resume is a testament to risk.
And speaking of monumental risks, that brings us back to the story I opened the show with. The absolute disaster of the startup Nearby.com.
Yeah, that was a big one.
This wasn't a young kid failing a test. This was a grown man, a CEO, steering a massive ship directly into an iceberg.
So true. Let's break down the mechanics of what actually happened there, because it's a masterclass in how blind ambition just completely overrides basic business logic.
Please do.
So Nearby.com launched a customer referral program. The idea was standard, right? Invite a friend, get a financial reward. But they built the program without any proper systemic guardrails.
Right.
They became so addicted to the dopamine hit of massive daily user growth that they completely ignored the unit economics.
Exactly. The users figured out how to game the system,
And the company began bleeding cash at an unprecedented rate. They lost 11 crore rupees in a single month.
And again, for global context, 11 crore rupees is roughly 1.3 to 1.4 million US dollars.
Right.
Evaporated. Gone in 30 days. It is a catastrophic hemorrhage of capital for a young company.
And his reaction to this crisis is where the psychology gets really dark. He developed this irrational, almost delusional optimism.
The reality distortion field.
Exactly. He convinced himself that global venture capitalists wouldn't care about the massive losses because the user acquisition graphs were pointing straight up. He thought he could outrun the bad math by just raising more money.
So he goes on this frantic global roadshow. He pitches the company to 68 different investors. Imagine the exhaustion of giving the exact same impassioned presentation 68 times, knowing your company is literally dying.
And 67 of them look at his numbers and give him a hard no.
67.
Yeah. And then the 68th investor finally offers a term sheet, offering this glimmer of salvation, and then pulls out at the 11th hour before signing the papers.
Which leads to the horrific reality of standing in front of 80 employees, crying and firing them because the bank accounts are completely empty.
Yeah, it leads to maxing out the credit cards, putting up the parents' house as collateral, and that devastating detail of selling his wife Ruchi's gold bangles.
Man, that detail about the jewelry, it really strips away all the sterile Silicon Valley jargon, doesn't it?
It really does. We love to talk about burn rates and runways and pivots, which makes failure sound like a clean mathematical equation.
Right.
But selling your wife's jewelry to buy a child's toy is the visceral, domestic reality of what a burn rate actually is. It's human suffering.
And the collateral damage to his family was just profound. I can't stop thinking about the anecdote regarding his young son, Vidur.
Oh, the drawings.
Yeah, kids process trauma so differently than adults. Vidur used to draw pictures of their family, and in every single drawing he ever made, he drew his father with a mobile phone permanently glued to his ear.
Because that was the only version of his father the boy ever experienced. A man who was physically sitting in the living room, but whose mind was entirely consumed by the fires he was trying to put out at work.
It's a haunting image, the absolute absence of presence. But you know, I want to push back on this entire narrative for a second. Let's look at this critically.
Okay.
Isn't there a massive risk of humble bragging going on here?
How so?
Well, it's very easy to write a poetic, beautifully articulated failure resume and boast about how hard your journey was once you are already sitting on top of the mountain. It feels a bit like a billionaire wearing a torn t-shirt to show how relatable he is.
That's fair.
I mean, millions of people work just as hard, suffer just as many failures, sell their jewelry, and they never get the multi-million-dollar exit.
That is an incredibly valid critique, and it is a trap that many successful founders fall into. They suffer from survivorship bias, assuming their specific grit magically guaranteed their success.
Exactly.
But what makes Warikoo's material different is that he explicitly acknowledges this exact critique. He states, very frankly, that his current level of success is insanely lucky.
Does he really?
He does. He says it remains unexplained. He refuses to map out a clear A to B line saying, because I suffered, therefore I became rich.
So if the suffering doesn't guarantee the success, what's the point of dwelling on the failure so much?
The core philosophy here is distinguishing between inputs and outputs. Money, fame, follower counts. Those are outputs.
Yeah.
They're temporary, highly volatile results of a specific moment in time, heavily influenced by luck and timing. You don't own your outputs. What you actually own is who you become through the process of navigating the failure.
The character building.
Exactly. The resilience you physically wire into your nervous system, the ego you are forced to shed, the deep empathy you develop for others who are struggling. That evolution of character is your actual life.
Wow.
The person you become is the input. Success and failure are just the weather. Your character is the house you live in.
Your character is the house you live in. That is a powerful reframing. If success is just a temporary output and the true metric of our lives is who we become, then we have to look very closely at how we're building that house. We have to look at the daily inputs.
Exactly. Because resilience and character aren't just bestowed upon you during an epiphany. They're built brick by boring brick through your daily habits.
And here's where it gets really interesting for me, because this completely breaks my brain.
Why is that?
Because every self-help book currently sitting on my shelf is screaming at me to set massive goals. They all say, set SMART goals, visualize the target, aim for the $1 million revenue, aim for the specific weight on the scale.
Oh, the standard corporate dogma.
Exactly. But Warikoo comes in and essentially says goals are the problem. He says habits hire us forever and take us higher, whereas targets tame us and leave us clueless after we achieve them.
It is a radical departure from goal setting. But let's analyze why targets are fundamentally flawed as a life philosophy.
Yeah, please do.
Target is a fixed endpoint. The moment you hit the target, the psychological motivation to continue the behavior vanishes.
Okay, yeah.
We see this constantly in the fitness world. Someone sets a target to run a marathon. They train for months, they push their bodies, they cross the finish line, they put the medal around their neck, and then they don't run a single mile for the next 6 months.
Right, because the target was destroyed the moment it was achieved. There's no more reason to run.
Precisely. A target demands temporary sacrifice for a specific outcome. A habit, however, demands a permanent identity shift. You aren't just trying to cross a finish line, you are actively deciding to become a runner.
He illustrates this with an example that I think every single listener will resonate with, which is the obsession with waking up early.
Oh, the hustle culture staple.
Yeah. We're fed this narrative that every successful CEO wakes up at 4:30 a.m. to take an ice bath and meditate. So setting the 5 a.m. alarm becomes the target.
Right.
But anyone can set an alarm. If you've been doom scrolling on your phone until 1 a.m. and that alarm goes off, you wake up feeling like absolute garbage.
Terrible.
You're groggy, your cortisol is spiked, and you just hate your life.
Because you focused entirely on the symptom, not the root cause. The actual secret, the fundamental habit that moves the needle, is sleeping on time.
Right.
If you build the rigorous habit of going to sleep at 9:30 p.m., waking up early isn't a target anymore. It's just a natural, energized biological byproduct of being well-rested.
But building that habit of going to sleep on time requires us to acknowledge a very uncomfortable reality about the modern world. Our attention is no longer our own. It's a highly contested, multi-billion-dollar commodity.
Oh, we have to realize that we are in a daily psychological war.
A war for attention.
Exactly. The smartest engineers, behavioral psychologists, and algorithm designers at massive streaming platforms and social media companies are actively competing for your sleep time.
It's crazy to think about it that way.
They view your basic human need for rest as their primary business competitor. They are engineering sensory hooks to keep you awake, scrolling, and watching just one more episode.
So choosing to disconnect, actively turning off the router, putting the phone away, and enforcing a bedtime isn't just a productivity hack. Warikoo frames it as a profound act of self-love.
Yes.
You're violently defending your own boundaries against corporations that want to strip mine your attention.
And to win that war, you cannot rely on sheer willpower. Willpower is a depleting resource.
Tell me about it.
Right. By 9 p.m., after a long day of work, your willpower is at zero. This is why Warikoo insists on engineering your physical environment using his own set of countersensory hooks.
Let's break some of these down because they sound almost obsessive, but they're honestly fascinating. He institutes absolute geographical boundaries in his house.
Like what?
He says you must never, ever work from your bed. You must never read while lying down. If you're working from home, you cannot stay in your pajamas. You must physically change into office attire, even if no one is going to see you.
The psychology here is deeply rooted in how the mammalian brain processes context.
How so?
The brain associates physical environments with specific neurochemical states. If you lie in bed and answer high-stress emails, you're flooding your brain with cortisol in the exact location where it's supposed to be producing melatonin.
So you're confusing your own biology.
Exactly. When you finally try to sleep, your brain is confused. It thinks the bed is a war room. And the same applies to clothing. Changing into professional attire sends a physical signal to your subconscious that shifts you into an execution mindset.
He takes hacking his own brain even further, too. He physically places his heavy dumbbells right next to his bed. He forces himself to charge his mobile phone in a completely different room overnight.
Sure.
He utilizes specific uplifting songs for his alarms rather than jarring sirens. He even applies a specific brand of cologne right before he sits down to start his workday at home. Wait, let's pause on that. He puts on cologne to sit alone in his home office.
I know it sounds crazy, but from a neurobiological standpoint, it's absolutely brilliant.
Really?
Yeah, the olfactory bulb, which processes smell, has direct neural pathways to the amygdala and the hippocampus.
Which are the areas responsible for emotion and memory, right?
Exactly. So by applying the same scent every time he begins deep work, he is bypassing conscious motivation entirely. He is classically conditioning his nervous system.
Like Pavlov's dogs.
Exactly like Pavlov's dogs. The moment he smells that cologne, his brain automatically shifts into a state of focus. He's engineering his environment so that the default, easiest action is the correct action.
Wow. Speaking of engineering your environment to make life easier, there is a hyper-practical digital hack in this deep dive that I immediately implemented in my own life.
Oh, the WhatsApp thing.
Yes, it's his concept of the WhatsApp self-group.
It's incredibly simple, yet it solves a massive modern problem.
For the listener, here's how you do it. You create a WhatsApp group with one trusted friend or your spouse. Then you immediately delete them from the group.
Sorry, spouse, you're out.
Right. Suddenly, you possess a private, encrypted chat room that consists entirely of yourself. Warikoo pins these groups to the top of his messaging app.
And what does he use them for?
He has one specifically designated for vital documents. He dumps a PDF of his PAN card, which is the national tax ID in India, his passport copies, his flight tickets, his health insurance cards, all into this one thread.
So smart.
When he's standing at an airport security line, he never has to frantically search through thousands of old emails. He has another self-group purely for fleeting thoughts and article links.
The underlying philosophy driving this hack is the concept of cognitive offloading.
Okay, unpack that for us.
Well, the human brain is a miraculous supercomputer for processing complex information, right? Synthesizing ideas, problem solving. However, it is an absolutely terrible hard drive for storing random disjointed facts.
Oh, tell me about it.
When you try to remember where your tax ID is, or that you need to buy milk, you are burning valuable cognitive RAM.
Right, it's just spinning in the background.
Exactly. By dumping all of that administrative debris into a WhatsApp group, he frees up massive amounts of bandwidth for actual creative thinking.
Which leads us perfectly into his broader philosophy on how we should navigate major life choices, which is prioritizing awareness over confidence.
This is a critical distinction that paralyzes so many people.
Yeah. Warikoo was asked what advice he'd give his 20-year-old self, and he said, make decisions from a state of awareness, not from a state of ignorance.
Because we live in a culture that demands absolute confidence. Before you change careers or end a relationship or start a business, society tells you that you must be 100% confident that the new path is the correct one.
Which is impossible.
Completely.
Yeah.
The truth is, nobody knows the future.
Yeah.
Absolute confidence is a myth.
He certainly didn't have it. When he was sitting in his U.S. university deciding to drop out of his PhD program, he didn't possess unshakable confidence that dropping out would lead him to become a CEO.
Right.
He didn't know if leaving his cushy corporate consulting job to join a chaotic startup was the right decision. He lacked any confidence in the destination.
But what he did possess was absolute terrifying awareness of his current state. He was completely aware that staying in the PhD program was slowly killing his soul.
Wow.
He was painfully aware that the status quo of corporate life would make him miserable for the next 40 years.
So that deep internal awareness was enough to force movement.
Yes. We're sold this illusion by productivity gurus that highly successful people have flawlessly executed 5-year master plans. But Warikoo argues that true freedom is looking someone in the eye when they ask where you will be in 5 years and comfortably replying, "I honestly have no idea."
I love that.
It isn't a failure of ambition, it's a radical openness to serendipity.
Okay, but I have to push back heavily on this idea of his freedom and spontaneity because as I read through his routines, there is a glaring contradiction.
Let's hear it.
He claims to love serendipity, but he also admits that he schedules absolutely every single minute of his existence on a digital calendar that he shares with his wife.
Oh, right, calendar.
He schedules his deep work, his video shoot times, his daily afternoon nap, his exercise, and he even puts blocks on the calendar labeled free time.
Which sounds a bit ironic.
Right. Doesn't the sheer act of scheduling your free time completely assassinate spontaneity? Doesn't living your life according to a shared, color-coded grid feel less like freedom and more like living in a maximum security prison of your own making?
It absolutely sounds restrictive on the surface. But you have to look at the psychological mechanism at play here. For Warikoo, the calendar isn't a prison. It's the fortress that protects his sanity.
A fortress. Okay.
Think about the pervasive, low-level anxiety of the modern worker. You're sitting on the couch trying to watch a movie with your family, but your brain is whispering, "Am I forgetting an email? Should I be working right now? Did I miss a meeting?"
Oh, I know that feeling intimately.
We all do. But by offloading every single commitment, both personal and professional, onto a rigid calendar, he eliminates that anxiety. When it is time to work, he works with ferocious intensity. But when the calendar says family time, he knows with absolute certainty that there is nothing else he is supposed to be doing.
Ah, so it frees up his mental bandwidth.
Yes. His mind's energy is spent entirely on being present in that moment, not on trying to remember his obligations.
So the calendar is the mechanism that allows him to be completely present.
Precisely. Furthermore, if you truly value something like your health or your marriage or even just an afternoon nap to recharge but you refuse to schedule it, what happens?
It gets pushed aside.
The urgent but completely unimportant fires of the day will always cannibalize that time. By scheduling the nap, he's building a wall around his priorities. The calendar doesn't trap him. It defends his actual life from the chaotic demands of the outside world.
Okay, taking that fortress mindset, that systematic awareness of how human behavior actually operates, we have to transition into how we apply this to the corporate world.
Absolutely.
Because whether you're a junior employee trying to climb the ladder or a founder trying to build a company from scratch, the mechanics of navigating human dynamics remain exactly the same.
And Warikoo establishes a very stark, uncompromising first rule for hiring or evaluating talent in the workplace. Attitude must always trump experience, which must always trump education.
Always. He argues that if you hire a highly educated, incredibly skilled pessimist, someone with an Ivy League degree who constantly finds reasons why things won't work, they will become a cancer in your team.
They will struggle endlessly and drag everyone down with them.
But if you hire a fiercely driven optimist with a great attitude, even if they lack the technical skills, they will simply figure it out.
Because skills are merely commodities.
Right.
You can sit someone down and teach them how to use Excel, or how to code in Python, or how to format a presentation, but you cannot send someone to a 2-week seminar to learn how to be relentlessly curious.
Exactly. You can't teach a 30-year-old how to remain emotionally stable and optimistic when a major client pulls their funding.
Attitude acts as a massive multiplier for whatever baseline skills a person has. But all the technical skill in the world can never compensate for a toxic, defeatist attitude.
He points out a very specific phrase that reveals this toxic attitude. It's a phrase we have all heard and probably all used. It's not my job.
Oh, the classic defense mechanism.
Right. Now let's explore why people say this. In a massive legacy corporation with 50,000 employees saying it's not my job might actually be a valid defense mechanism.
It helps you establish boundaries, avoid taking on the work of lazy colleagues, and prevents burnout.
Sure. But Warikoo notes that in a startup environment, uttering the words, "it's not my job," is absolute immediate death.
Because a startup isn't a well-oiled machine with perfectly defined, specialized cogs. It is a fluid, chaotic, sinking ship trying to patch holes while building an engine.
Great imagery.
If you're standing on a sinking ship, you cannot look at a hole in the hull and say, well, I was hired to trim the sails, so that water pouring in isn't my department.
You'll drown.
Exactly. If you artificially enforce rigid job descriptions in an early-stage company, you completely choke its ability to adapt and survive.
But the real core of workplace dynamics explored in this deep dive isn't just about whether you have a good attitude or not. It goes much deeper. It's about trust, or, more accurately, how we operate in a massive trust deficit.
Trust is everything.
There is a profound piece of advice Warikoo received from his very first manager when he was working in consulting. Warikoo was exhausted, and he was doing a terrible, sloppy job on some accounting drafts.
We've all been there.
He was turning them in full of calculation errors, secretly assuming his experienced manager would just catch the mistakes and fix them. The manager sat him down and delivered a line that changed his career. "If I can't trust you with your work, it doesn't matter how smart you are."
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it completely redefines what work actually is.
How so?
We've been conditioned to think that our work is the physical output, right?
Yeah.
It's the spreadsheet, it's the PowerPoint slide, it's the lines of code. But your work is actually just a physical manifestation of the trust your manager has placed in you. When a manager delegates a task, they are handing you a fragile piece of their own professional reputation.
So when you deliver a sloppy draft full of typos, you aren't just making a minor mathematical error. You are committing an act of betrayal. You are proving to the person above you that they cannot safely rely on you to carry your corner of the structure.
Exactly. And once that trust is broken, your raw intellect or your Ivy League degree becomes completely irrelevant. A manager would much rather work with a person of average intelligence who never drops the ball than a genius who requires constant supervision.
This concept of trust impacted Warikoo so deeply that he applied it to how he managed his own companies later in life, but in a way that is incredibly counterintuitive.
What did he do?
We live and work in a society defined by a trust deficit. The standard employer-employee contract is based on suspicion. The company says, you work for us for 30 days, we will monitor you, and if you perform adequately, we will pay you a week later. The employer hoards the power. Warikoo flipped this. He instituted a policy where he paid his team, everybody, right down to the interns, their full salary on the very first day of the month.
Hold on, I have to stop you right there, because my immediate reaction, and I imagine the listener's reaction, is that this is managerial suicide.
It sounds insane.
If I'm running a business with tight margins, and I hand a 22-year-old intern a full month's cash on day one, human nature suggests there is a massive risk.
Right.
What prevents them from just taking the money, doing the bare minimum, or literally ghosting the company on day 3? What about bad hires?
That reaction right there is the exact scarcity mindset that Warikoo is aggressively attacking. Yes. There is a marginal financial risk of someone absconding with a few weeks' pay, but you have to implement rigorous hiring guardrails first. You don't let people in the door unless they pass strict cultural filters. But once they're in the door, the psychological ROI of paying them on day one is astronomical.
How so? Explain the psychology to me.
It's rooted in what sociologists call the Pygmalion effect, or the expectancy theory. When you front-load the money, you are entirely removing the adversarial dynamic of prove you are worthy of this paycheck.
Interesting.
Instead, you're communicating, I have thoroughly vetted you, I believe in you, and I trust you completely. Now go justify the immense trust I have just shown you.
Oh, I see.
Human beings, overwhelmingly, will rise or fall to the level of expectation placed upon them. By treating them with ultimate trust on day one, you foster a level of fierce loyalty and ownership that no standard corporate incentive structure could ever buy.
They don't want to prove you wrong for trusting them. That is brilliant.
Right. But even if you build a team with high trust and a great attitude, the reality of founding a startup is painted in incredibly stark, almost bleak terms in this text.
It's definitely not sugar-coated.
We live in an era that glorifies raising venture capital. It's splashed all over tech blogs. Startup X raises $50 million in Series B. People comment on LinkedIn with congratulations, treating it like the founders just won the Super Bowl.
But Warikoo violently pops this bubble. He says raising money is absolutely not an achievement to be congratulated. It is a massive, stressful obligation.
He compares raising VC money to a chef going to the market to buy vegetables.
It is the perfect analogy to dismantle the hype. Going to the market and buying the finest, most expensive ingredients isn't the meal. It is merely the prerequisite.
And worse, the moment you buy those vegetables, the clock starts ticking. They're going to rot.
Raising venture capital means you have taken someone else's millions, and now you have the suffocating pressure of having to cook a spectacular Michelin star meal before the money runs out.
You're no longer just building a cool product for your customers. You are now heavily indebted to institutional investors who demand aggressive, exponential returns.
The autonomy you thought you had as a founder is instantly diluted the second that term sheet is signed. This is why he's so adamant about identifying the absolute worst reasons people use to justify becoming an entrepreneur.
Let's list them. Doing it purely to make money, doing it because you have a petty grievance with your current boss, or doing it because entrepreneurship has become a trendy aesthetic on social media and you want founder and CEO in your bio.
If your motivation is derived from external sources, if it's driven by greed, spite, or desire for status, the brutal, grinding reality of building a company will crush you.
Oh, absolutely.
The late nights, the payroll panics, the constant rejection. External motivation cannot sustain you through that. The only fuel that burns long enough to survive entrepreneurship is a deep internal obsession with solving a very specific problem for a specific group of people.
So, assuming someone has that internal obsession and they start a company or they lead a team in a corporation, Warikoo drops this fascinating philosophy on leadership.
Which is?
He says a great leader must engineer themselves to be completely replaceable when it comes to daily tasks, but irreplaceable when it comes to the grand vision. Now, practically speaking, if a listener wants to apply this on Monday morning, how do you actively make yourself replaceable at work without human resources noticing and just firing you for being redundant?
It feels like a dangerous paradox, doesn't it? But making yourself replaceable in execution doesn't mean you sit at your desk doing nothing. It means you shift your energy from doing the work to fanatically empowering your team to do the work.
Okay, what does that look like?
It means you document every single process you know. You share your industry knowledge freely instead of hoarding it to maintain leverage. You allow your team to make non-fatal mistakes so they can learn instead of swooping in to save the day to stroke your own ego.
And he emphasizes asking questions rather than just dictating prescriptions.
Yes. If an employee comes to you with a problem and you just give them the answer, you train them to be dependent on you. If you ask them, how would you solve this? You train them to think.
Which eventually makes your job easier.
Exactly. If you achieve this level of empowerment, the team eventually runs itself. Warikoo notes that an outsider should be able to walk into your office and have a hard time identifying who the actual boss is.
That's a great benchmark.
If you accomplish that, you haven't made yourself obsolete. You have elevated your value exponentially. You have proven you can build and scale a self-sustaining ecosystem. You transition from being a task manager to a visionary leader, which is the rarest and most valuable asset in any organization.
But here's the paradox of empowering a team, building a vision, and scaling an ecosystem. It almost always requires capital. It requires money.
Yeah.
And this brings us to a major pivot in Warikoo's story because his relationship with capital wasn't just flawed, it was entirely poisoned from day one. Which brings us to how we unlearn the lies we're told about money.
We project so much heavy, unresolved emotion onto money. We stop viewing it as a simple mathematical tool and start treating it as a measure of our personal worth, our morality, and our security.
And to understand Warikoo's financial philosophy, you have to look at the trauma of his childhood. He did not grow up with a safety net. He grew up perpetually drowning in debt. It was a stressful hand-to-mouth existence.
Yeah, that shapes a person.
He shares this incredibly vivid, heartbreaking memory of his family sitting together in their home, physically taking empty ballpen refills and manually injecting ink into them.
Wow.
They did this as a family because his father got paid a fraction of a cent for every 100 pens they successfully filled.
When you grow up in an environment where the lack of money is the root cause of every argument, every anxiety, and every tear shed by your parents, you develop a deeply antagonistic relationship with it.
You view money as the enemy.
You desperately want to acquire it to stop the pain, but fundamentally you do not respect it.
And because he possessed this deep-seated disrespect for money, when he finally grew up and started earning real capital, he made catastrophic, ego-driven financial mistakes.
Like what?
He didn't use money to build security, he used it to overcompensate for his childhood. He took out massive real estate loans, just blindly assuming the property value would magically appreciate faster than the crippling interest rates, completely ignoring the basic economic realities of inflation and taxation.
And he treated venture capital funding for his startups like it was endless casino money, gambling on massive growth instead of building sustainable business models.
And on a personal level, he maxed out multiple credit cards just to buy things that maintain the illusion of a wealthy, successful lifestyle. He was directly equating his self-worth as a human being with his spending power.
And this is where the dynamic with his wife, Ruchi, serves as the ultimate mirror for his financial immaturity.
I love this part of the narrative. I want to linger on the sheer irony of this situation.
It's so good.
Warikoo openly admits that during his high-flying startup days, he used to mock his wife's approach to finance. Ruchi wasn't gambling on tech valuations. She was steadily, quietly taking her savings and investing it into incredibly boring mutual funds and buying physical gold.
And he laughed at her.
He thought he was the visionary genius playing 3D chess with venture capital, and she was just playing checkers. Yet a decade later, when his grand startup visions collapsed, when the 11 crore rupees vanished, and the debt collectors were literally knocking at the door.
It was exactly her steady, boring, unglamorous investments that saved their family from total ruin. Not once, but twice.
Imagine the profound humiliation, but also the deep awakening of that moment.
The strategy you mocked was the lifeboat that saved you from drowning. It forces a complete, ground-up unlearning of all the toxic societal lies we are spoon-fed about finance.
So let's systematically unpack some of these massive lies, because we all believe them. The absolute classic, the one ingrained in us from childhood. Money is the root of all evil.
We are bombarded with narratives in movies and literature that desiring wealth is somehow morally corrupt, that rich people are inherently greedy exploiters who twist the law, while poverty is somehow noble and pure.
Right.
But Warikoo argues that money itself is entirely amoral. It has no ethical alignment. It is simply a medium of exchange. A $100 bill doesn't care if it is used to buy illegal drugs or to fund a children's hospital.
It's just paper, or numbers on a screen.
Exactly. Money only becomes toxic when we attach our ego, our insecurities, and our emotional stability to it.
Another massive structural lie he tackles is the ultimate middle-class dream. Buying a house is the pinnacle of financial success.
Oh, the global dream, really.
The script says you get a job, you get a 30-year mortgage, and you are officially a successful adult.
Which he mathematically tears apart, arguing that for many young professionals, buying a house is actually a massive financial trap.
Really? A trap?
We view it as an asset, but early in your career, a mortgage binds you. It anchors you to a specific geography. It forces you to stay in a job you might grow to violently hate, simply because you are terrified of missing the monthly payment.
Oh, that makes sense. The fear keeps you stuck.
And mathematically, when you calculate the compound interest on a 30-year loan, the property taxes, the constant maintenance, and most importantly, the lost opportunity cost of taking that down payment and investing it in index funds.
It doesn't add up.
Buying a house often makes zero mathematical sense. It is an emotional purchase for societal status, disguised as a savvy financial necessity.
But the financial mistake he highlights that hit me the hardest, the one I'm definitely guilty of, is our profound failure to value our own time. We treat money like it is incredibly scarce, but we treat our time as if it is completely infinite.
The behavioral economics examples he gives here are painfully accurate.
Right. He points out that a completely rational adult will willingly spend half a Saturday sitting in gridlock traffic, driving all the way across a massive city just to save 1,000 rupees, which is roughly $12 on a piece of furniture.
Just burning gas and time.
We do this because we can hold that saved $12 in our hand. We can conclusively measure it. But that exact same person will absolutely refuse to spend 2 focused hours on a Tuesday night researching industry standards and preparing a solid pitch for a salary negotiation with their boss.
Even though a successful salary negotiation would yield tens of thousands of dollars in compound earnings over the course of their career.
Exactly. Why do we do this?
Because we intrinsically understand the tangible math of the $12, but we fundamentally do not possess a mental framework for valuing our own 120 minutes. We view our free time as worthless unless we are actively clocking in for a wage.
So if we pull all of this together, if we aren't supposed to blindly hoard money, and if buying a massive house isn't the true goal, and if buying luxury goods to impress neighbors is a trap, what is money actually for?
Strip away the ego. What is the fundamental mechanical purpose of capital?
Yeah.
Warikoo arrives at a singular, incredibly clarifying conclusion. Money buys freedom. That is its ultimate and arguably its only true purpose.
Freedom from what, specifically?
Freedom to make wiser, slower choices. Freedom to look a toxic boss in the eye and say, I quit, without panicking about how you'll buy groceries next week.
That is real power.
Freedom to walk away from a bad relationship because you aren't financially dependent on your partner. Freedom from the paralyzing anxiety that hits when an unexpected medical bill arrives in the mail. And most importantly, the freedom to control your own calendar.
Ah, back to the calendar.
Exactly. When you chase money just to buy luxury items, you are trading your finite hours of life for inanimate stuff. When you deeply respect money, save it, and invest it wisely, you are literally buying back your own future time.
You're buying the autonomy to dictate what you do on a random Tuesday morning. But here is the hard truth. Buying back your time and achieving financial freedom is completely hollow if your life is filled with toxic, broken relationships.
Absolutely.
Which brings us to the final and perhaps the most difficult section of this deep dive, the hard edges of empathy, boundaries, and how we connect with people.
And Warikoo doesn't start with professional networking or choosing a spouse. He starts with the most foundational, inescapable relationship of all, the one with your family of origin.
He points out a stark biological reality. You do not get to choose the family you were born into. You don't choose your parents. You don't choose your siblings.
It's a lottery.
Yet these random people have the absolute maximum impact on your psychological wiring, your attachment styles, and your insecurities. And he argues that if that family environment was toxic, if it fundamentally damaged you, embarking on a journey of healing is not just some optional nice-to-have luxury for a spa weekend.
Right.
It is an absolute non-negotiable necessity.
Because the alternative is carrying that poison into every other interaction of your life. He addresses the concept of holding a grudge, which is a very natural human instinct when family members hurt us.
Sure.
But he deconstructs the mechanics of a grudge. When someone insults you or betrays you, the actual event happens once. It lasts a few minutes. But if you hold a grudge, you're actively replaying that painful tape in your own mind 100 times a week.
You are voluntarily outsourcing your ongoing misery to the exact person who harmed you in the first place.
You're allowing them to live rent-free in your nervous system.
Exactly. The boldest, most necessary choice you can make is to actively pursue your own internal healing, completely independent of whether the person who hurt you ever acknowledges their fault or offers an apology. You heal for yourself, not for them.
Right. You have to take that ownership.
So if we have to take that much ownership over our own healing, what does this mean for how we connect with the struggles of others?
Well, this is where it gets interesting.
Because he introduces a concept here that I found to be his most controversial, deeply unpopular opinion in the entire text. He states unequivocally that empathy cannot be taught.
It really is a provocative stance, especially because it goes against the entire grain of the modern corporate sensitivity industry. We're constantly told that with enough workshops and seminars, anyone can learn to be highly empathetic.
Completely. But he pushes back and argues that you either possess the innate biological or early childhood wired capacity to truly dissolve your own ego and place yourself in someone else's emotional reality, or you simply do not. You cannot acquire deep empathy by reading a bulleted list in a corporate training manual.
This raises an important question about how we even define these emotional states. Warikoo breaks interpersonal connection down into a very clear hierarchy.
Let's walk through it.
At the absolute bottom level, you have sympathy. Sympathy is saying, I feel sorry for you. It requires distance. It's looking down from a position of safety of someone who is struggling. It inherently carries a slight tinge of pity.
Right. It's looking at someone who got fired and saying, oh, poor you, that must be tough.
Precisely. Then, one level above that is empathy. Empathy is stepping down into the hole with the person and saying, I truly understand what you're going through. I feel your pain. I am in the trenches with you.
And that's the trait he argues is largely innate.
Yes. But above both sympathy and empathy, at the absolute peak of human connection, is respect.
Respect is looking at that person in the trench and saying, I admire how you are handling this.
Yes. Respect isn't just about feeling their pain. It's about honoring their resilience and their dignity. And true respect is incredibly difficult to give because it demands absolute authenticity.
Authenticity is key.
Think about the people you follow online. It is very easy to respect someone from a distance when you only see their carefully curated public persona, their wealth, or their perfectly edited videos. But Warikoo argues that isn't respect, that's just infatuation.
I want to ground this in the listener's reality right now. Think about the most frustrating, annoying person in your office. The one who constantly drops the ball or complains.
We all know one.
If you find out they're going through a messy divorce, you can easily sympathize with them. You might even empathize. But can you respect them? True respect only happens when the professional mask comes completely off.
It's hard.
When you see someone laid bare, heavily flawed, struggling, entirely stripped of their impressive job titles, and you look at their raw humanity and say, I still admire who you fundamentally are.
And the most confronting part of this philosophy is that you have to apply that exact same ruthless standard to yourself.
Oof, that's true.
If you stripped away your job title, your bank account balance, and your social media presence, would you actually be friends with your own self? Would you respect yourself if the mask came off?
That is a terrifying question to ask Mirror. And this deep, profound level of reflection is so beautifully captured toward the end of the material in the letters Warikoo wrote to his two children, Vidor and Ozma.
Those letters are incredible.
These letters aren't just sweet parental musings, they are distillations of his entire worldview. In his letter to his son Vidor, he focuses heavily on the trap of entitlement.
A very real trap for kids of successful people.
He explicitly reminds his son of his immense privilege. He tells him, you go to an expensive air-conditioned school. You have a massive safety net. You did not earn any of this. You were gifted this by the geographic and financial lottery of your birth.
Wow, he really lays it out there.
He demands that his son be grateful for his position rather than proud of it.
It is a vital, necessary distinction for anyone who achieves a level of comfort. Pride in unearned privilege rapidly breeds arrogance and a sense of superiority. Gratitude for unearned privilege, however, breeds deep humility and a persistent desire to give back to the world.
And then there's the incredibly touching letter to his daughter, Ozma. He describes watching her stand in front of a full-length mirror, clutching a plastic toy microphone, singing at the top of her lungs to an Alexa speaker.
That's adorable.
Pretending with absolute, unwavering conviction that she is a massive global rock star performing for millions. And watching her total belief in that moment, he writes to her, you are whoever you think you are.
It is the ultimate testament to the power of the internal narrative.
Yeah.
We are all essentially constructing our reality based on the stories we repeatedly tell ourselves in the quiet moments.
Exactly. And it's so clear that he traces these specific philosophies, humility and the power of habit, directly back to the ultimate lessons he absorbed from watching his own parents navigate their difficult lives.
His parents went through a lot.
His father experienced constant, crushing professional failure. He was buried in debt. He took entrepreneurial risks that blew up in his face. But Warikoo realized the enduring lesson wasn't the financial failure itself.
Is his reaction to it.
Yes, it was his father's relentless, almost stubborn dedication to waking up, putting his shoes on, and working incredibly hard every single day, completely undeterred by the failure of the day before.
It's the physical manifestation of resilience. The ability to just keep showing up regardless of the scoreboard.
And from his mother, he learned a completely paradigm-shifting definition of perfection. We usually think of perfection as this stressful, anxiety-inducing, unattainable standard.
Right, something we constantly fail at.
But his mother believed that perfection is simply when you do something with such high-level, consistent finesse that the entire outside world looks at it and is utterly amazed. But to you, internally, it doesn't feel special at all. To you, it just feels like a natural, everyday habit.
Which brings this entire deep dive full circle right back to our discussion on building the architecture of your habits.
Yes, it does.
When excellence, integrity, and self-awareness become your default, hardwired baseline habits, the world will look at your life and call it perfection. To them, it looks like magic, but to you, it's just a Tuesday.
Wow. We have covered an immense amount of ground today. We have traveled from the agonizing depths of an 11 crore rupee startup collapse, through the neuroscience of why a bottle of cologne can trigger productivity, all the way to the quiet, poignant moments of a father watching his toddler sing to an Alexa.
To synthesize this entire journey for the listener, Ankur Warikoo's life and his writings are a powerful testament to the idea that failing spectacularly is not a dead end.
It's just a data point.
It is a necessary stepping stone, but it only functions as a stepping stone if you have the emotional courage to deeply examine and embrace the scars it leaves behind.
Right.
By systematically building rigorous, environment-driven daily habits, by aggressively unlearning the toxic societal lies we're told about money and status, and by demanding absolute authenticity in our relationships, we eventually earn the only currency that actually matters, which is our ultimate freedom.
And if you look closely throughout all of his failures and successes, there is one constant, unbreakable thread. It is his personal superpower, the mechanism he leans on to pull himself out of every disaster. And that superpower is his relationship with time.
Time.
By relentlessly, unapologetically scheduling and guarding his time, even building fortress walls around his free time, he ensures that the trajectory of his life is dictated by his own internal priorities, not by the random, urgent emergencies of the outside world. Time is the armor he wears into the arena.
And the truth is, we all have our own version of that armor, our own unique superpower, even if we haven't quite identified it yet.
Which brings us to our final thought for today. I want you, the listener, to stop whatever you are doing for just a second. I want you to think about the absolute worst thing happening in your career or your personal life right this very second.
The heavy stuff.
The humiliating rejection letter, the suffocating debt, the conflict with your family, the project that is completely falling apart in front of your eyes. What if that specific disaster is not the end of your story? What if, when you strip away the societal script and look into your own true mirror, you realize that this exact moment of agonizing failure is actually just the opening sentence of your future success resume?
The scar is just undeniable proof that you are finally in the arena.
Take that thought, examine your own daily inputs, find your superpower, and go do some epic shit of your own.